Hey, this time I'm here to talk about freedom of speech, which is the second most important thing that our founding fathers valued right after freedom of religion. Freedom of speech is the ability to express yourself or to say what you think or want. And freedom of speech is incredibly important because what we say matters, because it conveys ideas, and ideas are far more potent and more powerful than just about anything else in human existence. Ideas have tremendous value or tremendous destruction. So, freedom of speech is one of those all encompassing and very important ones. I'm going to try and keep it brief, but it really feeds into just about every other amendment that we have. All right. The first thing you want to understand is the guiding principle. Freedom of speech is not the freedom to say anything anywhere. You have the freedom to express yourself provided it does not harm other people. Your freedoms end where other people's freedoms begin. If you want to put it a little shorter than that, don't cause harm. You can cause harm with what you say, and we're going to see about that in some of these things here. So, the guiding principle that the Supreme Court has always taken in interpreting freedom of speech is that you cannot cause harm to other people with your freedom of speech or freedom of expression. Now, there is one place where they allow you to do anything you want, and that is in your own home. If you want to go into your home and go on the most amazing cursing tirade that anyone's ever let loose, you can, because that is your home, and it's not causing harm to anyone else. It's your home. And if people that are there don't like it, they can leave. Now, if you go outside your home and you let loose, well, the neighborhood's going to hear this and it might be considered disturbing the peace, depending on the local laws of your city or county and where you are. Okay? So, there is one place that you can say anything you want. The most heinous things can be said if you're in your own home. All right? First off, the Supreme Court has ruled that your words cannot be used to cause a false panic. If there truly is something wrong, you alert people and they all go running away from it or go the other direction. The most common thing back in the 1800s was yelling fire in a crowded theater just to cause the panic and have everyone rush for the exits and trample each other, injuries and sometimes death. And so you cannot use your words to cause a false panic. In today's culture, it would be like yelling, "Look out, he's got a gun!" And everyone dives for the floor, runs for the exits, tramples each other. People might even pull out their own guns and start firing, Chaos could result. And then you say, "Oh, just kidding. I didn't know that would happen. I thought it might be fun." No, you're going to be headed to jail and paying for damages. So you cannot cause a false panic. That's what the Supreme Court has ruled. Another limitation on your speech is the school system. You cannot interrupt the educational environment. Those are the words of the Supreme Court. Schools are heavily regulated when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of expression because they're designed for an educational environment. And the Supreme Court has said that school systems have wide powers and a lot of latitude when it comes to making that happen. So if there's going to be disturbances that prevent people from learning, schools can take you out of the classroom. They can suspend you. They can expel you. That has been the ruling of the Supreme Court. There are differences, as we learned about in religion, where certain private schools can have certain other criteria, but in a public school, it's that educational environment that's really the all-important thing. So if you disturb that, the school can squelch it quite a bit. So I know you might say, "Oh, they're totally coming down on me." Yeah, they are. Prison is probably the most heavily regulated. The military is probably next most heavy. And the school system is probably the third most heavily regulated environment in our society. Okay? So if it interrupts the educational environment, the school has wide powers to say, "Stop it." You cannot cause a riot. What I mean by this is The case occurred in New York City. There was a group of neo-Nazi people who wanted to celebrate Hitler's birthday, and so they wanted to plan a march, and they applied for a sanctioned march in the streets of New York to celebrate Hitler's birthday. And when the people of New York got the print for this, the city officials, they said, wait a minute, the route you want to take for your march goes through a Jewish neighborhood. I think you're just targeting them. And they were like, no, we just wanted to go there. Like, no, because what this is going to do is it's going to cause a riot. The people in that area are going to be extremely upset, and you know this is going to cause a riot, and that's why you're doing it. So they denied their ability to march. Now, this went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said neo-Nazis have the freedom of speech. You can you can say anything you want. This is a public place. You have to give them the right to do that. But every city is beholden to keep the peace, and so they need to have a prescribed marching path that everyone is supposed to take, and that way you're not discriminating against any group. So pick the marching route you want, and everyone who applies has to use that. Okay? And they have to adhere to the rules. They cannot cause harm. So they can march, they can express, they can say, but they cannot hurt, destroy property, beat people, kill people, anything like that. You cannot riot. All right. You'll notice in the Dalles, whenever we have a parade or a Veterans Day parade or a candlelight march or, whatever these things are, Cherry Festival parade, they always take the same path. And that's because of this law right here. The Supreme Court has said the way we interpret this freedom of speech is that you have to take the same route. So all parades in the Dalles go the same route. That's what they have to. And they're designed to go through commercial districts. Because this is part of freedom of speech, is the freedom not to hear something. The freedom not to hear something is just as important as the freedom to express yourself. This was written about in a book in the early 1800s by John Stuart Mill, J.S. Mill. He wrote a book, it's called Liberty. It's a very good read if you want to pick that up. And what he's pointing out, and the Supreme Court has adopted, is the idea that the freedom not to hear something. So in your home, if you can say anything, it's also in your home that you want to be able to not hear something if you so choose. So people marching by your house, you're probably going to hear it, and that's going to disturb your living environment. So what most towns do, and the Dalles is no different, we send our marches through the commercial district. Businesses are there, people can shop or not, they can open up their stores or not, it's less invasive, and that's why they choose that. So the freedom not to hear something is very interesting. And for most media outlets, if you don't want to hear something on the internet, you go to another website. If you don't want to hear something on TV, you turn it off or turn the channel, watch something else. And so most of the time you have the freedom not to hear something. Okay? So if things are voluntary, you've got that freedom. Now, it gets a little dicey when people are standing on the corner shouting and you're driving to work. You will hear what they're saying, but they're on the sidewalk, you're driving in the street, you see them, you might shrug, you might yell back, you might honk and say, I support you. Whatever your choice is, that's your freedom of expression, that's theirs. But there's not a harm being done because they're not stopping you. If they were to stand out and block the traffic, well, that's going to prevent you from getting to work and you might get fired. Preventing people from getting to the hospital for a doctor's appointment they need, for picking up their kids, for taking their kids to school, in which case you're violating the educational environment. So blocking roads and standing in front of things and causing mayhem, that's illegal. That is a violation of the don't cause harm guiding principle up here by the Supreme Court. Which brings us to a curious thing, which has only been happening in the last few years around the country in America, and I've always been sort of shocked by this. I've never seen this before. This idea of the cancel culture. So what has happened is that some people have said, I don't like a certain speaker, and I don't like them so much, I don't want their ideas to be said, and I don't want anyone else to hear them. It's almost like a Puritan in ancient or olden New England, the Plymouth people that came on the Mayflower. The Puritans were very rigid in their structure of what you believe and what you think. So it's this idea that no one can express themselves unless they express the correct viewpoint. And if they have any other viewpoint, we must cancel them. We must make it so that they cannot speak. And so what has happened is this idea of you cannot cause a riot has been flipped on its head. This was to prevent damage from people in the streets rioting. So what the cancel culture folks do is they say, well, if I don't want a speaker to speak, I'll just cause a riot. And then they can't speak because you cannot cause a riot. See? So all I have to do is throw the biggest fit I can, throw flower bombs and water at them and, do all kinds of things, kick over chairs, go crazy. And now we got to cancel them speaking. They can't come here. They can't speak. No one can hear them because I've canceled them, because I'm causing a riot, therefore they cannot speak. Not how the Supreme Court wrote it. It's a complete inversion of things. And it's also, this is my opinion, it's also a bit disturbing because all ideas should be out there, even bad ideas, because that's how you know they're bad. You can look at them and say, it's bad for these reasons. And that's called thinking. That's the most important thing you need to do, is understand how to think. Hearing something that is not true or bad or false is not going to harm you. It's up to you to say and identify that is false. That is correct. That is good. That is bad. That's the best thing you can have. It's thinking. I had this happen all the time when I was at Oregon State University. They would say a speaker coming, controversial speaker, interesting speaker. And you'd go there, and most of the time it was free because that's the whole point of college. You expose yourself to different ideas so that you can think about them, measure them against each other, and determine what's the best thing to apply to your life and to your city and to your county and your state, your country, and your world. Okay? So I listened to a lot of different people. I went, I was an economics major in agriculture and resources. I went to people who spoke about the free market. I went to the leader of the Communist Party of Oregon spoke at my college. I heard all kinds of different variations and views on things so that I could get an idea of what is right and what is wrong. The problem with cancel culture is it does not allow that. It becomes an orthodoxy. There is the way, and there is the evil people. And that doesn't allow you to think. You're just told what to think. So this is a disturbing progression in America as far as freedom of speech, because it is clearly not freedom of speech. Because remember, you have the freedom not to hear something. If I saw a speaker and I didn't like him at Oregon State, I just wouldn't go. Or sometimes I would go and I'd say, oh, this is garbage, and I'd get up in the middle and I'd leave. See, I had the freedom not to hear something. But in this case, with cancel culture, now I'm losing my freedom to hear things, and people are losing their freedom to express things. And I think that diminishes our culture, it diminishes our thinking, and it diminishes our ability to distinguish between different competing ideas, because we don't even know they exist. So this is a disturbing trend right here, cancel culture. All right. There's another thing that the Supreme Court ruled on. It's called speech plus. So speech, your words, is not just the only way you express yourself. So this is ways of expressing yourself, but it's speech plus something added to it. And an example would be armbands. I think in the famous case of Tinker versus Des Moines was the Supreme Court dealing with a case where a bunch of students wore black armbands in protest of the Vietnam War. So they wore them to school, and they sat there and they took notes. They didn't disrupt anything. They didn't stand up on tables and scream and yell and kick over chairs. They just acted like normal students. They did not interrupt the educational environment, but the school was wanting to support the Vietnam War, and they kicked the kids out. They were suspended. So this went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, again, the educational environment is important. If these kids are wearing armbands, that's not stopping anyone from learning, therefore it's okay. So that has become part of our culture with that ruling. If you want to wear something that, is a protest against something, that's fine. It's not disrupting things. If you want to wear a t-shirt that is in favor of something or a protest against something. Okay, it is not interrupting things. If you want to wear a hat that says "Make America Great Again," MAGA, on there, it's caused a lot of disruption. People will go around flipping the hats off, stealing them, that kind of thing. That's a violation of people's freedom of speech. They have the freedom to wear a hat because that's not hurting you. They're just stating what they feel. That's their freedom of speech. You might not agree with it. You might even go up and talk to them and engage people and say, hey, why are you wearing that? I don't like that, and here's the reasons. Why do you support that? Tell me your reasons. That's a good logical discussion because now you're giving reasons, going back and forth. You're learning something, they're learning something. That's the whole purpose of freedom of speech, that expression. But if we get into this cancel idea, like I'm just going to take your stuff and burn it, it's not freedom of speech. All right? So same kind of thing. What about burning a flag? If you bought the flag, you can burn the flag, okay? You cannot cause harm. You cannot rip someone else's flag off their house and burn it. That's their property. That would be a violation of the guiding principle. But if you want to go buy a flag and you want to go out on the sidewalk and you want to light it on fire, that's your statement. You can do that. Some people will be accepting. Some people will be offended. You got to understand that's their freedom of speech. Okay? Over here, national anthem. We've had a lot of issues with this in the last few years. Do you stand? Do you kneel? Do you sit and ignore the whole thing? Well, all of that is acceptable. This is a choice. You're standing. You're not saying anything with your speech, but you are saying something with your actions. So if you stand, you're saying something. That is speech plus. If you kneel, you're saying something. That's speech plus. If you sit and ignore the whole thing, that's, again, a statement. Those things all convey information, and that's freedom of expression. But none of it causes harm. All right? Standing, sitting, or kneeling, there's no harm being caused, and so you can do whatever you want. All right? So you need to understand in all these cases, in all these instances here that the Supreme Court has worked on in the past 200 years, and this is just some of them, the guiding principle is what you want to understand. You don't cause harm to other people when you express yourself. If you end up causing harm, then you're not following freedom of expression. Okay? So keep that in mind. I hope this generates some questions for class. I'll see you then.